So, we have officially begun. Today is, it's 7:26 p.m. on Tuesday, November 22nd.
Lovely.
This is episode number of the CapmLew Podcast. And, we're going to apologize for any audio glitching that might have kept the episode number from coming through clearly. And we've been in some form of planning mode for some days now. There are not a lot of people following the podcast, but for those who have been wondering, someone asked me today. We are.
Who asked you?
I don't know. I don't want to put him on blast, but
Somebody?
I think it was Eric Sanders. I spoke
Nice.
with Russellville, Arkansas, on the Facebook Live.
That's
We
it.
start our episodes now with about 15 or 20 minutes of Facebook Live, and then the episode goes into the Podbean-osphere.
Yes.
From there, you can go to our Podbean, and I think we might be live on Apple. I don't know. Have you checked yet?
Yes, it is yet to be confirmed. We were
Okay.
supposed to get an email from them.
It takes time with Apple.
Yeah.
They have to vet you and make
Right.
sure that you're, adequately, just see if
Just
you're
adequate.
legit in
Yeah.
their view. I'm like, whatever, man. Is Rocco in here?
He's not.
Okay.
The dog is not here.
So we are, we've done some organizing. Luke, why don't you tell folks about the organizational concept? Go
Yeah,
ahead and spit.
I don't want to reveal too much because of surprises and things,
And also because it'll be commitments that we'll have
Yeah.
to keep. And we want to be able to pivot.
Yes.
You know, we
Yes.
need the ability to pivot.
Yes, if we need to. But the one thing that I think that we have settled on is that you guys can expect that from now until the end of the year. These are the early days, baby. This is all about what it's about. This is all about getting to know us and getting to know Lou a little bit better and doing some foundational episodes. So in 5 years when we're multinational or whatever, we can tell people, if you want to know who we are, go check out our early days.
I'm sad that Podbean is audio only at this point because I want all of you to know the pained expression that just went across my face.
So pained. So pained.
I'm not embarrassed about who I am because I am a living letter about rescue and redemption, and I want you all to know that.
Yes.
But I am also simultaneously embarrassed about who I am if, in sharing who I am, you think I am, I don't want to sell myself. I want to help to platform ideas, messages, and important conversations that we need to have.
Yes.
And one of the, it would be a loss if we snowed all you guys into thinking that we're really cool. We may be cool. That's just an opinion. But we're not supposed to be here to snow you guys into thinking that we're cool. We're supposed to do the other thing I said, platforming bigger conversations and things like that. And that's actually tricky.
It is.
Luke, one of the things I liked about the work that you did was that you sort of put forth a plan
Yes.
for us to have like a theme,
Yes.
and then to do a number of episodes
Yes.
on that theme.
Yes.
And then when I fire up the workshop next spring,
Yeah.
we think that we will be able to run some rounds of boards on the theme and commemorate the journey of that theme. I'm messing with the visual interface right now. What I'm doing is I'm wedging a multi-tool underneath the back of the iPad. But if I get the iPad into just the right position, it is 100% certain that it will slide off of its precarious perch. But I brought some tech up here.
Is it Velcro?
I didn't. I brought up this clip.
Beautiful.
And I said to myself, I think that this clip, if I just do this with it.
What?
No.
Well, maybe
No,
just clip
if
the
I
thing
just do this.
so now the clip is sliding for everybody.
What if I did that?
Okay.
What if I do this? What if I did just that?
I mean, the question
Nope, it's still moving.
No. I think it's good.
What if I drop a pen through the clip?
Oh my gosh.
To keep it from... Dear listeners, again, we're sorry that you don't have this video. What I've done is I've affixed... What are those clips called?
I don't even
binder
know.
clips.
They're like binder clips, yeah.
I've affixed a binder clip.
Clippy
and then I've put a pen down through the binder clip.
Yeah.
And now...
Right.
All of our technical dreams belong to us.
Yes, Elon Musk just felt a disturbance in the force. Oh my gosh.
What I liked about what you did was,
yes.
Luke, I'm kind of like a howitzer. I love to discuss things and like that, and I have a brain inside it's in here.
Yeah.
But I'm not a very organized guy, and Luke has done some organizing and put together some concept, and so we're a little ambitious. We'd like to do 2 episodes a week.
Yes,
I think we might.
Yeah, I might be a little bit.
It's ambitious.
Yeah, well, and it's going to be probably touch and go through the holidays because of holiday things, but certainly into the new year. Technically, we have a plan.
I could see us doing 2 a week
all the way through, yeah,
without any problem.
That might be the case. Hypothetically speaking, if all were to go well and God blesses our work and we live, then we could have a plan for the entire year of 2023, which is exciting because we would have a trajectory to follow and a baseline to come off of, and you guys would get sick content every couple days for an entire year with other content as well, like boards and things of that nature, if we can figure all that stuff out. So it's exciting.
We're also working, on all those podcastery things that are important
yes.
podcastery things.
Yes.
So
yes.
We're taking it one day at a time.
Taking it one pack at a time.
So Luke, what are we talking about today? We've got our coffees.
Yeah.
My favorite. This is my present favorite cup. I love it for the small top on it, because when you got a big mustache, you need a smaller top.
Yes.
So the broad one's just full soak. What are we talking about today, Luke?
Today is the Lou Ross history, or as I like to call it, Lewisry.
I think you're gonna have that.
Yeah, you're gonna have that. You're gonna have a lot of that probably. We're doing Lou Ross history because you've put out a lot of content over the years. There's probably like 1,000 hours of content that you probably put out over the past 5-10 years, and I think that you've done some of your personal history, but I'd like our viewers to understand who you are a little bit better. So I want to talk about you and how you grew up and what it was like and kind of how you became who you are. And I figure Facebook Live doesn't give us a thing, but I figure we'll do like 1 or 2 questions and then we'll move to the Podbeam, so then people will be left wanting more.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, I was born in South Bend, Indiana. Why not start there?
Yeah, you were born in South Bend. How long did you live there? I forgot about that.
I left there when I was 5.
Why did your parents move?
My dad was a professor at Notre Dame, and
Where's Notre Dame?
That's in South Bend, Indiana.
It's in South
Notre
Bend,
Dame's
Indiana,
up there on Lake Michigan,
yes.
Type of concept.
Yes.
And my mom is a horse lady. My parents are both still alive, and I love my parents.
Yes.
And my dad was like an adjunct professor at Notre Dame. He was not a tenured professor.
Okay.
He's a freshwater ecologist, biology.
Yeah.
And he's a scientist. So what happened was he was in a teaching position, which is pretty common. And he went from being a teacher to being a working scientist. He got a job working for Texas Instruments.
Oh.
In New York.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So at 5 years old, I got packed onto an airplane with my brother. He's 2.5 years older than me. So he was 7 and I was 5. And we went from being little kids on a horse. We had a horse spread, horse farm, My mom loaded up the horses and she trailered them across the country with her V6 Chevy, 1970-something V6 Chevy.
Oh my gosh, how many horses, bro?
She killed it. I think there were only 2.
Okay.
I think there were only 2 because that's all that I remember that trailer carrying.
And the vehicle allowing.
Yeah, well, those, I think that was I don't know what motor was in that Chevy, but I think it was the straight 6.
Okay.
Which was a dope motor.
Vehicle.
And so she drove across while Brian and I flew, and we stayed with my uncle in Connecticut. My dad's family's from Connecticut. My mom's family is from New York, the southern tier out in the country, along the Susquehanna River. And so both of them were educated. My mom was a teacher. She was like a grade school teacher before she became a mom. And my dad, of course, was teaching at Notre Dame in the biology department. And then we moved to New York, and he worked for Texas Instrument for some numbers of years.
Some amount.
And then his job switched, and he went to work for the Power Authority of the state of New York.
That's very cool.
Which back then, now it's the New York State Power Authority, because
right.
they didn't like PASNY.
PASNY.
They changed it they changed it from the Power Authority of the state of New York to the New York State Power Authority.
Right.
NISPA.
Right,
nobody calls it that.
It's better.
They just call it the Power Authority.
Yeah, that's
which,
right.
if you think about it, is a much better name.
It
think Power Authority. It's good.
Yeah, right.
And,
what part of New York were you guys living in?
well, we moved to the Hudson Valley, about an hour north of New York City.
Okay.
It was rural, but it was also right where IBM, which, the personal computer had not been invented at all yet.
Yeah, what year are we talking
1978.
about? Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
all this dirt.
I was 5 years old. It was 1978, and we moved to a 5-acre, I'm going to use the word farm, but at that time, our property was just a swamp. It really was. It was wetland. And we moved to a little house, and then over the following years, my dad built a big old barn.
Yes.
And chicken coop, and horse pastures, fencing, and dug a giant pond. He dug a pond. It was probably under 100 feet long by under 450 feet wide. It was not giant. It was not a lake. It was a pond.
Okay.
He's a freshwater ecologist, so he stocked it.
Okay.
He stocked it with all native species, and we had largemouth bass in there that just grew their full lifetime.
That's cool.
They'd come up when you were walking around it. We really only fished it if... Anyway, so I grew up pretty isolated. My parents being... I don't know. My parents, I don't consider them really eccentric. But maybe my parents were a little eccentric. Like, one of the things I grew up with was, even from childhood, that anytime a topic came up at the table, maybe we went to school and someone talked about something and we began to discuss a topic, out would come the Time Life books or the encyclopedias, or the dictionary was always getting pulled out.
Very cool.
My parents couldn't let it pass if you said the wrong word, wrong usage of a word.
Yeah.
If you got your prepositions or pronouns wrong. So I grew up with that kind of background, and I think it shows in how snobby I am about, issues. I mean, I'm smart snobby. It's just true. I don't agree with myself in that at all. I don't. But I'm like I like a lot of redneck things, but I am not a country guy. I'm a school guy.
Sure.
When something happens, I just start reading, and that happened because of the way my parents raised me.
Sure.
There was a little bit of church in my life, but it was not a constant thing, and it was not in any way a real deep thing. But
was that driven by your mom or your dad?
My mom.
Okay.
My mom liked to go to church. My dad, listen, before we say anything more,
yes,
I have got 2 of the coolest parents around.
Yeah, absolutely.
My mom is a pip.
Yes.
She's sharp as a tack and high energy, and I just love her.
Yes.
And my dad is one of the most intelligent and compassionate people that I know.
I love that.
And no, faith wasn't a thing of the home and the house. It wasn't the kind of thing where I had a lot of problems in school because moving from the sticks of Indiana to I kind of lived in the sticks, but the culture wasn't the sticks because IBM was blowing up, and we had a lot of what we called back then city kids coming into our schools.
Yeah.
And it was extremely diverse. I mean, we had kids from Taiwan and China, Japan, India, Pakistan. I mean, I went to school with kids from all over the world.
It's very cool.
But you didn't know it.
Yeah,
they were just kids. They were just kids.
Right.
But the city kids, and also the city kids were there, and they were aggressive. It was New York, but they weren't meaner than the country kids. We also had country kids.
Right.
We had a strong Appalachian culture in New York.
Yeah.
And New York was savage. Like in Indiana, people would help you out.
Yeah.
In New York, in the 80s.
Yeah. Because that would middle school was like 80s for you. Like
no, middle. We didn't have middle school. You went to primary school.
Okay.
That was kindergarten through 6th grade.
Okay.
And then you went to junior high for 7th and 8th.
Okay.
But when I went, was the first year they put. Yeah, we went to 7th and 8th. And then when you went to 9th grade, you went to the high school. That was new. The 9th graders used to be with the 7th and 8th graders. They moved us to high school. So then in the high school, you had 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And the physical difference between those ages is incredible.
Yes.
And I got my ass kicked by all grades.
Dude, so like your school experience. Well, first of all, like how would you describe yourself as a kid? Like looking back now.
I was really maladjusted.
Maladjusted.
Describe
that a little bit. Talk to me about it.
I was a very sensitive kid.
Yeah.
I was a lot like I am now.
Yes.
I was very sensitive, but I was very paralyzed. I couldn't process the speed at which the social interactions around me were moving.
Yeah.
And so I was overwhelmed. And I especially coming from, it's just being me from where I was from.
Right.
I couldn't understand how to deal with how mean the kids were.
Yeah. They were like savages.
Yeah, they were fairly typical.
Do you feel that way? I mean, my middle school experience was full of savages, but what you're describing, it seems a little bit more intense.
I remember when I started kindergarten, and this is formative for me. It's still with me today. Yeah. When I started kindergarten, I was kind of a sappy little kid.
Sure. Sappy, like small and...
No, I was sappy like, this is what I do. I'd walk up to because I came in late in the year, I would walk up to some kids and I'd say, hey, can I play with you guys? And they always said, no, go away.
Oh my gosh.
That was the culture of New York in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I went from playgroup to playgroup, and the teacher didn't incorporate me. She just set me free. This is my this is my memory.
Yeah,
so
ahead,
I'm almost sure.
This is all you, right?
I'm almost sure that Mrs. Katz over there at the elementary school did better than what I remember.
Sure.
But I remember standing in the middle of the room alone while the kids were playing, and I noticed one of the memories I have. This kind of thing can be really distorted.
Yeah.
But it seemed like the kids relished a chance to tell another kid to go away. No, you can't play with us.
Yes.
It was super surprising to me. And that sense of surprise and loneliness and isolation really accompanied me into first grade. We had a really good teacher in first grade, and I really enjoyed that. And she did work. And then in fourth grade, I had another teacher like that. But in fourth grade, there was a coalescence of bullying. And in fourth grade, I had become a bully magnet.
Dang it.
Much for the same reason I am one now.
Really?
Yeah, because I'd gone from being told, no, you can't play with us,
right,
to when kids would be like that,
yeah,
I would be like, I would say things like, you can't be like that. And I didn't know curse words or anything. I was a really innocent little kid. I didn't know curse words or anything.
Right.
But I knew that these kids being mean like that was super bogus and super lame as a 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kid. And I got up to 10 or 11 where you're in 4th grade.
Yeah.
You start falling in love with the first girl you ever fall in love with.
Totally.
I mean, you have all these feelings going on.
Right.
And I was an absolute mess. I mean, just as an example, my favorite music band was Hall & Oates. I mean, no, they're actually sick.
yeah.
They always met at work, Hall & Oates.
Yes.
Now, some of my friends were into Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
And I remember being terrified by the album art, with Eddie.
Dude.
I was terrified of it. And then one of my friends, he played for me The Number of the Beast. And I was like, man, I don't want to do this. I was a very isolated kid. Rhode Island school system was exactly the same. Says Brandon. I haven't talked about this with many people but by 4th grade, I had collected up a set of bullies who just, man, every day. And my teacher, who was a really good teacher in a lot of ways, she had parent-teacher conference. I remember being told, Louie, you're too sensitive.
By your
you're
teacher?
too sensitive. Yeah. And but my teacher had told me, you can't be so sensitive.
Sure.
And I get it, man. But the thing about a 4th grade kid is they can't just self-transform. They've got to go through this thing to figure it out. So I was really a mess at the end of 4th grade.
Yeah.
And I had an incident where the kind of from kindergarten to 4th grade, and I choked another boy. I choked him till he almost died. He didn't almost die. He didn't have to go to the hospital.
Yeah,
he didn't have to go to the hospital.
You scared him, right?
I choked him until other kids begged me to please stop choking him.
My
And
God.
it was
What
really,
happened? What was he doing?
It was bad.
Was he talking shit?
No, it was way worse than that. There were groups of kids chasing me, throwing rocks at me.
No, dude.
It was a really bad incident.
That's so gnarly.
It was a
was
bad
that all
incident.
the time? Like,
no,
when you say
not
bullying,
at all. That was it happened at an event.
Yeah.
It happened at an event that was off school premises.
Okay.
I think that I elicited to some degree those behaviors from my peers.
Okay.
I think that I think my energy was like, I think I got those kids who would bully a kid to pick me.
On purpose.
I have always entered the drama. I mean, this is true of me as an adult today. I mean, I see, like if I see sexual harassment, I write an article about it.
Right.
If I see someone bullying a fat kid, I'll write a clean Facebook post about it.
Right.
That doesn't mention names or put on blast, but talks about the behaviors, and then almost guaranteed,
right, here we
they're going to come out of the woodwork and identify themselves in the comments on it. And I think that those of us who've known me long enough know what kind of result that's gotten me locally in my own city, and what impact that had on my board brand and my business. But at the same time, so I'm saying I elicit this kind of interaction, but it's because ever since I was little, I just have no taste for tolerating bullying.
Yeah.
But I'm not the kid who can just walk up and like punch a guy in the face for bullying.
Yeah.
I'm the guy I remember one time there was this big boy. He was in 9th. The school went to 9th grade at the time. And then when I was a 9th grader, they put 9th grade in the high school. And so the school used to be 7th, 8th, and 9th. And then they put us up. Anyway, I was the lowest age group in 2 of the schools.
Of course.
Because of the way they changed it.
Right.
Well, I was a 7th grade kid, and he was a 9th grade kid. God bless him wherever he is. I hope he's still alive. A lot of the kids I knew when I went to school have died. I know at least 8 of my classmates have died.
Gosh.
But this boy, he was in 9th grade, but he was big. Not fat. He was fit and strong.
Yeah.
And
Luke is my hero.
I love that. Nick Pennington, good to see you on here, bud.
Hey,
so this boy was a strong boy. The back of the bus was just incredibly
just a war zone.
They were so gnarly.
Yeah, dude. Okay.
And they were also hilarious.
Yeah, I know. You get that.
I remember having this mix of fear and admiration for the boys in the back of the bus. And so this boy, he was picking on one of the little kids.
Yeah.
And he was taking his foot and he was like just messing with the kid with his foot.
Yeah.
And it was really disrespectful, and the kid was mousing down real hard, and you could tell it was just not good. And I said something like, I had learned curse words at that point. And I said some curse words to him, and some really disrespectful things and slurs about him.
Yeah.
And so he moved up a seat.
Yeah.
And I looked back. I was in 5th grade.
Yeah.
And he was in 7th grade.
Okay.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And then he moved up another seat.
And he's like,
the bus stopped again, and he came up another seat. And then he moved up, and he was in the seat right across the aisle from my seat.
Yeah.
And he said, "What'd you say?" And so I just said it again.
Just hammered down.
I hammered down.
So sick, dude.
Well,
I got mad respect, bro.
Small. I was 11 years old.
Poor
and
Buzz.
he was 13 or 14 years old.
Right.
I think he was maybe a year older than his grade. You know,
Okay.
we had a lot of that, the big boys.
Yeah, dude.
And so I said it. And that boy came across the aisle and got in my seat. And so I slugged him right in the guts, maybe more than one time. I slugged him right in the ribs. I really laid into him hard as I could, but I was little.
Yeah, dude.
And I wasn't trained how to fight. You know? So I hit him with my punches as hard as I could. And then he punched me, and he broke my cheekbone.
Oh, my gosh.
And then he punched me again, and he broke my tooth in half.
Dude, he like hit you real hard.
He was very good.
Shit,
he was very good at punching.
Oh, dude, yeah, you're like in 5th grade, just in the belly of the beast, bro, back of the bus.
And then it was at my stop. He had actually timed it, so it was right before my stop.
And there you go, right.
And so I got up and I got off the bus and I walked into my house.
Yeah.
And my tooth was in bad shape and it hurt. So my mom had to take me to the tooth doctor.
How was your parents' response, like when you would come home and be like, hey, I'm getting bullied?
I would come home every day and be like, what am I supposed to do? And my parents were at a loss because they had a really strong belief.
Yeah.
You shouldn't fight with people.
Yeah.
So they were like, ignore it.
Right.
Ignore it.
Yeah.
Ignore it, and they'll stop. But
right.
my problem was, and I didn't have the presence of mind for this.
Right.
My parents grew up in a more civil time.
Sure.
This wasn't the way it just was every day for my parents.
Right.
And so, did you see that comment there?
Gotcha. Hi, Brad.
Thank for the shirts, Brad, at the bike shop.
I want one.
Love you, brother.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that Brad's in my life.
I know, me too.
So I just had a really warm feeling.
Yeah.
So my parents, I don't think they'd ever gone to school. No, that's not true. My dad went to school in like the 50s in Connecticut, and he had a ton of this stuff.
Okay.
He had a ton of it, but the way my dad handled it, and he's very smart.
Yeah.
He's very smart, and I'm not as smart as him. I never have been smart the same way that he's smart.
Yeah.
My dad, he understood that if he just was wallpaper,
they'd leave him alone.
They'd leave him alone. And
right.
he succeeded to a great degree in getting through it. My dad also understood.
Yeah.
He grew up on a chicken farm, on a poultry farm in Connecticut. His dad owned a big poultry farm. And he was, my dad was in charge of ex-cons and immigrants and people in his crews.
Just gnarly dudes.
They had a Finnish community where my dad was, from Finland. Yeah. And my grandfather assigned big fins to my dad. My dad ran things. It was really mafia, and I'm really proud of my dad. Ever since he was 15, he's been a badass.
Yeah.
I was not a badass. I still am not a badass. And don't feel like one.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll let it figure out in the end. A sip of coffee.
Yeah.
So...
We should switch.
No, I like it. I don't see any reason not to.
That's fine.
I don't see any reason to.
Diversifying content's fine.
Theoretically, it might take away from our Podbean.
Yeah, but this is nice. That's fine.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
It might take away from our Podbean, but until we figure out how to do some things, I want to keep sharing this story with folks.
So let me ask you this: when you moved into like 15, 16, like moving into high school, was it the same then? How did it?
The time I was 15, I was a black belt in Taekwondo and had already won New York State championships. And it I was at 15, I was dating girls and a real mess. I was very, very angry.
Yes.
And started to
shine that noise.
Why would anyone buy and send 200 stars?
Just hit us with the emojis, bro.
Yeah, send emojis. Don't do that. Don't do the star stuff. We're grateful for those of you who've come over to the podcast to support us. Yes. It's all going into making this thing happen, but I don't know about these stars.
So when you were like 15, did you become the bully? Did you go over to the dark side?
So I remember being 15 years old, and there was a boy. I was a skater. I've been skating since I was 12, and I've been training Taekwondo since I was 12. And my brother and I trained 4 days a week, and Saturdays were like a 2 to 4 hour day.
Jeez.
And we were killing it. We legit fought for our black belts. And even though it was like 3.5 years, we were in a hard style of Taekwondo. It's not the same as the kind you see now. No disrespect to people who work hard at what they do. But it's garbage now. Anyway.
Double down.
That's what all the old guys say.
Right, double down.
But
So you were gnarly at that point.
I was getting bad
at
15, and between 15 and 16, it was quick, but I got real bad.
What do you mean by that? Like, help me understand.
My thought life began to be overtaken by thoughts of violence as a kid. And my relational matrix was made up of, some people would say bad girlfriends, but I would say bad relationships.
Sure.
I was not a good kid.
Yep.
I was in no way prepared to have a romantic relationship with anyone, and I was in these the era was like you were supposed to get a girlfriend and all this, and I was in way over my head with all of it, and I made a right mess of everything.
Yeah.
I was a 15-year-old kid.
Right.
Riding around in cars and going to, places I shouldn't be and doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
And my parents, I was going to say, my parents really had a hard time with me. When I choked that one kid, my mom took me to ice cream.
Okay.
Because they told me all the time not to beat someone up,
right,
not to do anything like that, but it had gone so far.
Yeah.
And that's not like, I don't count that as like I think my mom was, win for mom on the parenting aspect. Yeah. But then back then I went to counseling.
You were?
As a kid. I did. After that, I went to counseling.
Yeah.
After that. And I noticed from the time I choked out that bully at like 11, 12 years old, 10, 11 years old,
yeah,
to the time I was 15, that my mind was tapped into violence and anger,
right,
as my main mode. And
right,
you're like, oh, you're a little kid. And I'm like,
right,
yeah, 15-year-old boys aren't just little kids.
No, it's like, yeah,
they're young men.
Yeah.
And I was heavily corrupted with, and I remember I went to a counselor who was, he talked about higher powers and stuff, and I decided at like 14, 15 years old that my development would be rage. That I was tired of being weak, and I was not going to put up with it anymore. And I began to shift from like pop music and stuff over into punk rock, and I really got into Black Flag. Hated Depeche Mode, hated the soft stuff. I loved the hard stuff.
Yeah.
I really got into Black Flag, Minor Threat.
Yeah.
Rollins spun off the Rollins band right at the end of that time there.
Yeah.
They did the Pink Fairies Do It.
Yeah.
And I was just really into that super high energy.
Right.
And I really was angry. There was a distance in my relationship with my dad, and I think this is not rare. I think a lot of young people grow up and there's distance between them and dad for reasons.
Yeah.
And I have huge respect now as an older man for reasons.
Yeah.
And my dad and I have discussed reasons together.
Yeah.
And as older men, like, we really get along. That's really awesome. Enjoy calling my dad and asking him what he thinks about things, and I have a really gratifying relationship with my dad now. But I did not have that as a kid.
How did maybe you felt like he didn't understand where you were coming from, or like just had no concept of what to do or how to handle these things?
We were so different. My brother, 2.5 years older than I am, he understood my brother. My brother was academically wired.
Yeah.
He was able to blend in.
Yeah.
My dad was a real blend-in kind of guy.
Yeah.
And but very smart and very achieved. You know? But that's not to say that my dad was a wimp or a wallflower.
Yeah. No.
And
right.
And my brother and my dad were more similar. But I was eccentric and artistic in my disposition.
Right.
And I mean, look at me. I mean, nothing about me is anything that was on my dad's wavelength. And,
yeah. Right.
And my dad never beat me or did anything like that to me. But what he explained to me when I was a teenager, and I hope this reflects well on him.
Yeah.
I remember being young, like maybe 12 or 13, and saying, you know, what's the deal? Why are you so far away from me?
Yeah. Yeah.
He was like, I just can't stand you.
Oh my gosh.
You know, he's so like, savage. I don't want to beat you. Yeah, right. You know, I don't know how to deal with you, so I don't know what to do. And you know, that really hurts a kid.
Yeah.
But I honestly, looking back over the years, I'm not trying to say that my dad was right about that, but like, I didn't do that with my kids. But I have to say, if you're having trouble dealing with your life and you feel like you might be abusive toward your kids or something.
Right.
And you lock it down and you just hold your mud.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, his dad was trying to figure it out, man. He's probably at the end of his rope. He didn't understand you. He didn't know how to connect.
He was in his 30s.
Yeah, man, that's
he was
hard.
a man in his 30s,
it's
just
hard,
trying
man.
to make it through.
Yeah, that's right.
Building a career and not knowing what state you're going to live in. And
absolutely.
He pulled it off. He wound up retiring from the power authority.
Right. Yeah,
and I'm happy. And we wound up close later in life.
Yeah, that's okay.
And honestly, I think that people are maybe a little too focused on getting it right.
Yeah.
People give it what they got.
Right.
And that's one of the ways I look back. But there were some, I want to talk in the next episode. Let's see how much time we're in. We're at 36 minutes. So next episode, I want to talk about a funny thing that happened.
Yeah.
That really started to shift my gears. But running up to about 15 years old, it was quite a mess. I had been sexually active by that time because that was kind of the thing.
Right.
And that's, I'll tell you what, that was too young for me.
Yeah.
I was not enamored of what I was experiencing, being glued to these weird relationships, and I was not mature enough to handle the emotional impact of those things.
Yeah, sure.
I also had some experiences in like Boy Scouts and in school things that were a bit extreme. I did not suffer being sexually abused, but I, in retrospect, was surrounded by predators.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit weird to look back on my life and see like just really thread that needle.
Yeah.
But I wound up turning 16 and being really, I was doing well in the martial arts, and I was okay in skateboarding. I was actually a pretty good skateboarder, but things were changing. It was a big shift right in those years toward flip tricks and like that, and I didn't like the direction skateboarding was going. I was big long slash grinds and ollies. Right. And everyone was stopping. They weren't going anymore. They were lining up and they were trying tricks.
Yeah.
And I could not have been more critical.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, and this brings me to 15 as well.
Yeah.
You're thinking about that story about that kid on the ramp.
Oh yeah, that one, dude.
Yeah, this was a culmination for me.
Yeah.
I was in my later 15th year.
Yeah.
And there was a kid on this ramp. And I know his name, and he was, okay, so in my area of New York, it's rural, but it's got lots of city people. The culture is aggressive. I have a lot of stories, and I've told them before on other media, but this story I don't think I've ever told. There was a guy who had a ramp kind of built in the woods behind his house, and we would go out there and wipe our feet off, and wintertime, and it was a mess. Always crappy in New York in winter.
Yeah, just sad.
We'd skate and get down to our t-shirt, skating and sweating in 20-degree, weather, and stay out all weekend. just sleeping in garages and stuff, and just, it was a mess. It was not restful. The nutrition was low.
Right.
But this thing started happening where you had these California skateboard companies, and they were, Vision Streetwear was specifically, and you'd have these kids that were decked out completely in Vision Streetwear. And they couldn't ollie, they couldn't wall ride, they didn't rip or shred or do anything on their boards, and they were, it was a bummer to me back then, because I've always had trouble giving respect to people just because they think they should get it.
Right.
I've always been resentful of illegitimate authority.
Right.
What I think is illegitimate. And maybe my measurements are correct. I don't know. But this poor kid, he was a year younger than us, I bet. Which is a big step back then, 14 instead of 15. He might have been the same age, but he was little and thin and not strong, but he was also timid, and he wouldn't, I don't remember exactly, but my memories are of like that. He wouldn't drop in, he wouldn't hit coping, and he was decked from head to toe in like the turned up little bill biker hat, Vision Streetwear, everything head to toe, skater. But all that stuff, by that age, I already saw that all that stuff was just garbage that displaced actually skating.
Right.
If you had enough money in your life to, I was working at the time building, I worked for a summer doing carpentry, and I made like $80 a day.
Dang.
And I went straight to the bike shop, skate shop, and bought decks, because when your deck broke, you were screwed.
Yeah, such a bummer.
And I finally, I just bought decks and trucks and wheels and bearings, and I was took care of what was most important.
Right. And
because I didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
It was not like that at all. I didn't get the Star Wars figures I wanted. I didn't get, it's not that my parents were bad, but they just weren't on that wavelength. And a lot of the kids around me, because they were city kids and they moved there because either PepsiCo or IBM, they had big white collar jobs. Those guys, they had money. They had all the Star Wars sets. They had all that stuff. And I remember I was kind of there's like haves and have-nots.
Right.
I was a have-not.
Right.
That's a fact. I was a have-not. I couldn't be in Little League.
Right.
I couldn't be in those things because my parents, and until karate at 12, my parents committed to that. And my dad was like, yes. And he drove me 4 times a week to karate and back, over 20 minutes each direction. He was down for that, but he was not down for Little League and stuff like that.
Star Wars figurines.
And I'm very, very grateful that they were pickier.
Right, yeah, sure.
And I had a chip on my shoulder about the jocks, and I had a chip on my shoulder about these, the people who dressed like a skater but wouldn't skate.
Right.
I had some disillusioning and disappointing interactions with some of my peers, because we would go to skate for a weekend, and then they would be sad and maybe pout.
Yeah.
Because it was too hard.
Right.
And I remember really as a kid not being mature enough to handle being gracious. I started making fun of this kid on the ramp. And I know what it was. It was spiritual. Yeah. There was a spiritual dynamic involved, because my mouth and my face made fun of that kid so long and so hard, and I was saying things that were so over the top, mean and angry to him.
Right.
I didn't mean any of it.
Right.
But I couldn't stop.
Right.
And this whole having rage as your higher power thing, and this whole meditating on anger, and I would just seethe in my room. My room I had built into this den. I was just a seething, angry, kid. And I was very frustrated because I had tried out the way to do relationships. I had friends who would go and get laid, and they would pretend like it was all just a big party. But man, if I ever tried any of that stuff, I was like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, this is terrible, man. You can get a kid.
Right.
you could get this is really bad. I was very sensitive. I always was sensitive. I started making fun of that poor guy, that kid. You know what? I wonder if he was just fine.
Yeah, maybe he was.
You know what?
Dude.
Maybe he was just fine. Maybe
how's your feeling about it now?
My feeling about it was that I just ripped this kid up and down, and
for like how long?
Half an hour, 45 minutes.
Dude,
I don't know.
Just savaging.
Maybe it was only 15 minutes, but that's a long time.
Right, just to be talking.
And I didn't just use every word in the book. I was saying things to him that were, I thought, were so cutting.
Right.
And I remember thinking after that, I'm not okay. Like, I'm not a well person. I need help.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a friend who was, his parents were Indian immigrants, and he was very sensitive and intelligent.
Yeah.
And we started to talk about God. I started to get curious about God. I'd been to church a little bit, but I was not a church kid.
Yeah.
And the church I went to was not really connecting the dots, man.
Yeah.
It wasn't connecting with me.
Yeah.
And my friend and I started talking about God, and we started having some really cool and engaging conversations about God. And I really opened up my sensitive little heart at 15, 16 years old. I might have been 16 when I cursed that kid out.
Sure.
I started to talk to God on my bed at night and say, like, now I also remember I had a couple other experiences that I can fill in later. One of them was I was given a Bible. I remember I was at a certain age, I think it might have been 15. Luke rhymes with puke. That's funny, seeing the comments scale up. It's not pronounced Luke.
Luke.
But I was given a Bible by the pastor, the reverend at this church, and he's obviously, in retrospect, he was a Freemason, because he told me I could use it to unlock key knowledge and become victorious in life and business using the Bible.
Yes.
And I was like, man,
right,
that is so not what I give a crap about. I want to shred. I want to kick ass in competitions.
Right.
I had gotten gold at U.S. Cup. I had gotten gold in state championships and bronzes, and I never got a silver medal. It was always bronzes and golds. And I just started, anyway, so I just started knocking people out. And TKOs. And I really wanted to fight. I wanted to skate. And I wanted to travel. But I didn't want to read the Bible, and he gave me a gigantic Good News New Testament. It was huge. It had pictures in it. It was ridiculous for a teenager. But I took it home and I started reading in it. This was around the time I cursed out that kid on the ramp. And in it, I read in Matthew chapter 5. This is not a Good News New Testament.
Yeah, come on. There's not even pictures in this bad boy.
This one doesn't have pictures. But I read in it, this is happening because I have this problem.
We got
readers. Can't see anything. I read this. You've heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you, whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment, and whoever says to his brother, you stupid idiot, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you jag off, shall be in danger of hellfire. And then later on it says, you've heard it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And you know what? I looked at that, and my takeaway at 15 years old, I don't know how old I was. I can't remember things very well. But as a youngster was, I'm evil. I agree. Yeah. And I shut that book. I shut that book, and I know I must have discussed it with my friend, my Hindu friend, who was lovely, open-minded, gentle soul.
Yeah.
He was a super intelligent guy, but I know I must have discussed it with him. But my takeaway was, if there's a God, he knows what I'm made of. That's what I'm made of. I'm made of anger. I'm made of sexual appetite. I'm made of these things, and I'm no good. And I just closed it, put it away, and thought, if he made me, he must understand. How if there's a God with a heaven, he must understand. Maybe not, but what are you going to do about it? That's who I am. And I knew that I was bad.
Yeah.
And so I took that with me into the next chapter. The next chapter of my life kicked off in my 16th year. Some things began to coalesce in my life.
Just quickly before you go into that,
yeah,
I'm
we're actually not going to go into it in this episode.
Okay, next episode. I'm interested in the correlation between the experience that you had on that ramp, being so mean to that kid, and
that was terrible,
and what you were talking about now. Like, were you feeling guilty about it? Were you like, oh,
No, I did. I felt badly because I recognized that what I had just been was cruel.
Yeah.
But I also had turned a corner into being mean.
Yeah.
Like I had turned a corner into not just being mean, but I desired to. I began to have uncontrollable thoughts of anger and murder. It became a preoccupying mental flow of violence and murder against people in my mind at about 15. And it really kicked off when I choked that kid after the 4th grade.
Right.
Really kicked off at that point was when, and when I was littler, I didn't have any means by which to fulfill those things. But as I got older and began to pube out and began to become skilled in martial arts and and I was still young, 15, 16 years old. You're not even, but I was ripped and fast, and I was achieving in martial arts. And what was interesting was the more driven by aggression and angry thought I was, the more popular I became.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not meaning to cast any aspersions on my friends, but I began to make friends. I began to have a flavor, and began to find my people, and I began to exhibit influence.
Yeah.
But people who were like, there was a lot of occult stuff going on around me in that area, a lot of witchcraft and stuff, and the witchcraft and occult kids would love to talk to me because I had a lot of God ideas, and I was very spiritually. I was a kid, but I was very, I was deep, and they would do stuff with tarot cards. They would do stuff with Ouija boards, and the Ouija board would move. Yeah. The tarot cards would flip out with these terrible and crazy things, and
specifically when they were around you.
Me, when I was around me. Like if I sat down at the table, then all of a sudden things got spicy.
Right.
And that was an experience I had of like that I was developing this sense of power and of dynamic, and it was beginning. I thought I was wearing it, but it started to wear me. And started wearing me out. And I remember one of the episodes was cursing that kid on the ramp, and another episode was I was bumped into by a friend. And
like out skating? Or
we're out skating.
Or something. Yeah.
I was very, very tight-wound and frustrated.
Yeah.
And I was not good company. I had a couple of skate buddies, and I was bumped into. And I kind of blacked out. And while I was blacked out, I could kind of see what was happening. But I put my elbow through this, it was a marquee of some sort, and they put OSB over it.
Okay.
And I elbowed the OSB and put my elbow through
the
OSB. I didn't go through the glass.
Right.
And then I began to punch myself in the face.
Oh my gosh!
And I had this happen a couple times. I can see on the Facebook I've got some old friends and some family watching. I began to punch my own self in the face, which you can do.
Yes.
Especially if you really mean it.
Yeah, if you really mean it, don't.
Began to punch myself in the face and the side of the head, and I counted 24.
Oh my gosh, dude.
I was exhausted.
You were like giving it to yourself.
And my friends who were with me, they had gone across the street. They had backed away. They were good. They did good.
Yeah.
I think they did good.
Yeah.
Because what happened, I remember I turned around to hit the guy who bumped into me, my friend.
Yeah.
And when I went to hit him, I punched myself. I put my elbow through the thing.
Yeah. And
then I turned to hit him, and when I pulled back to hit him, and I thought, no, man.
Right.
And so again, I said I thought I was wearing it, but it was wearing me.
Yeah.
You know, and this personal rage thing that I had adopted from about 13 years old to about 16 years old,
right,
was getting out of hand.
Yeah, it's in full swing.
Literally 24 short swings.
Yeah.
And I was bruised up, and I was exhausted, and they got me home.
Yeah.
And it did affect my friendship with my friends. They now saw me as kind of a scary person.
Yeah.
And so there was a shift at that point. I was 16 years old, and my journals and stuff from then were full of murder and worse.
Yeah.
And my art from then, you know, I was doing art. My art was real negative, and my spiritual interests were closer into the occult.
Right.
I had a couple of times where I just began to cry out to God and say, God, if you exist, you know, there's going to have to be something happen.
Yeah.
And having read what I read from Matthew 5, you know, I really knew that I was not a good person. I knew that my fundamental nature was not benevolent. And I was seeing the development of some really negative stuff in my life. So
yeah,
that is kind of perspectives on my early life.
Yes.
Oh, my cousin just commented, I'm sorry I was not there for you then, but there were some times when you were. I remember you. Sometimes we don't appreciate the small things that we do and say. And there were some meaningful interactions with family members and people.
Yeah.
I have several that have been on my mind today, and I'd like to take this opportunity to say to the people who were kind to me when I was little, who tried. We were all simultaneously going through it.
Yeah.
There's simply no utility in going beyond saying, I love you, I'm sorry it was like that, and then moving forward together. It's very touching to see one of my cousins reach out to me right now, because I remember you, and you are precious to me today. That's why I like having the Facebook Live up.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to maybe we could develop technologically towards some things. But these are only perspectives. There are many more stories in the story. We're at minute 58, and we're gonna bring this one to a close. Yeah. And then I want to take it from here on the next one. And we'll just keep these getting to know yous going.
Yeah.
One thing I want to say for the folks who listened through these early episodes, you've maybe been with us through the technological sound checking and some of the less organized stuff. I do love you, Karen. We're doing these getting to know yous, and these will be episodes that folks, if they are like, what are these guys on about?
Yes.
We feel like these perspectives on our younger life might be helpful for people to explore and understand what manner of devilry and kookishness is this. So.
Yeah, and if I want to remind people as well, if you have questions that maybe you want to have answered, then we have an email set up. It's CapmLewQuestions@gmail.com. Tippy-tappy that into the thingamabobber, and we'll take a look at them and incorporate if we can.
And CapmLew is spelled CapmLew, CapmLew.
Yeah, questions.
CapmLewQuestions@gmail.com.
Yeah.
We'd like to keep this an AMA environment because we are not so good at thinking up things to say. And if you've listened to our earlier episodes, you'll see that if we don't know what we're going to talk about, we'll just talk about anything.
Right, yeah.
So we'd like to thank, we'd also like to, I'm just very grateful that we got to share these things with you. They are by no means complete. And if any of it reflects poorly on anyone involved, I'd like to, you get it. Yeah. It's not my intention at all. Yeah. And I love you guys.
Yeah. I also want to add quickly, if you're interested in supporting us, we have a Patreon on Podbean. That is all.
Is it a Patreon?
Or it's a thing.
It's a patronage. There's a patronage concept on Podbean.
Right. It's less than a cup of coffee a month.
And we're working on. It's whatever you want it to be. Listen, I think you guys are going to get the gist of it. I used to make content before that was relatively free form, but I was traveling all over the eastern and central United States on my motorcycle, and we want to get back to that. Yeah. I want to go out and interview people. Yeah. I ride skateboards for Life Skateboards. Yeah. So does Luke.
Yes.
Life Skateboards is a longtime friend in board making. I'll be making skateboards in the spring again. Very small runs based on our themes. Yeah. They're going to be collector's items that we hope you will just destroy them anyway, but they're not going to be cheap. Right. And there are no apologies for the craft and all that goes into them. Yeah. If you don't think it's worth it and you want to say so, it's fine. I'm already dead.
Yeah, right. You can't kill a dead man.
You can't kill a dead man.
You can't kill a dead man. Yes. I love it.
And I love it when people call me a profiteer.
Yes.
And they call me a cult leader.
Yes, dude. Where's all the money?
I'm like, all that profiteering and cult leading. Yeah. Well, actually got me.
Yeah. Somebody said, the guy's a cult leader.
Let me go ahead and lift up the corner on it. I think that I could be called a friend of Jesus, inasmuch as he might call me one of his friends. Yep. Not that I'm always as friendly to him as I ought to be. Yes. And I think that'll come clear in the episodes as we go, and it'll establish a good understanding for you that you're listening to a guy like that. Yep. And if that's offensive or not tasteful to you, I understand. Although I have found that some of the warmest interactions I've had are with people who can't stand that crap. Yep. Who are still willing to connect with me. And it is always a huge honor to be asked questions by skeptics and atheists and people who've had church hurt in their lives. And I just want to help. Yep. I'm not sure I'm able to. Yep. But judging by what's happened since I was 15 years old, he is. Yep. So, for what it's worth.
For what it's worth, baby.
For what it's worth, CapmLew. So we're going to close the Facebook Live down, and we're going to say goodbye on Podbean. This entire thing will be available in audio form, crisp with our $13 lav mics. And we just use an iPad and an iPhone and these cheap lav mics, and we don't have ambitions toward grandeur, although, honestly, I'd like to spend the rest of my life talking to you guys. Yeah. Might be worth it.
Yes.
So, for what it's worth, CapmLew and Brother Luke. Catch you soon.